right, we can begin. Thank you for everybody for your patience.
Good evening, everyone. So glad to be here with you. I'm Elizabeth Blanco, the CAO of Chief Academic Officer for Pasadena Unified School District. And I want to thank you for coming to our virtual town hall, and also thank our parents, our leaders of the LCAP PAC, Mrs. Laura Diaz-Allen, Mrs. Lorena Yepe Hernandez, and Mrs. Natasha Mahone for initiating this conversation this evening and gathering additional input from our parents. I would also like to thank Mr. Jeff Albert, who is our host. He is the Director of Community Engagement for Pacific Oaks College, and also sponsors and facilitates our Collaborate Pasadena meetings. He will be our moderator this evening and sharing some of that moderation with our parent leaders. So we're going to go over our summary of COVID relief funds, some of the legislation and dates that have brought us to this point of having these funds and developing a plan, and then the requirements of the plan. And what you're probably all most interested in is the services and supports that we will have for our students. There's engagement opportunities that are listed where you can put your questions in, and we'll get back to answering them if we don't all answer them this evening and have them posted on our website. So if you'd like to ask an additional question, please go to www.pusd.us questions. So I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Albert now.
Thank you. Welcome, everybody. On behalf of Collaborate Pasadena and the LCAP PAC, we'd really like to welcome you to this town hall and thank the staff for putting together this presentation in literally 1 week. It was a big ask of them, and we really appreciate them coming forward. We look forward to learning about this plan and to continue to partner to communicate with our parents and community members as we go back to school together. There is, as I posted in the chat and also mentioned, there's Spanish interpretation. There's also Spanish live stream at via K-Learn, and there's an English live stream via Collaborate Pasadena, both on YouTube. I will paste a link in the chat if you prefer to do it that way. And then also we ask that you submit questions during the presentation, and they will be read after the presentation. And if we don't have time, we are ending at 7:30. If we don't have time, they will definitely be part of a FAQ that will be posted to the PUSD website. With that said, I'd like to introduce our superintendent, Dr. McDonald.
Well, good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. First, let me thank, of course, the LCAP PAC as well as Collaborate Pasadena for hosting this event. Let me also thank the district's leadership team and everyone who played a role in making this happen. As Jeff just said, they had to turn this around in just about a week, and they have done an amazing job in doing so. We are seeking your input this evening as we develop the district's plan for how we will use the one-time funds from the Expanded Learning Opportunities Grant. The plan is scheduled for action by the Board of Education on May the 27th. So in developing the plan, we want to hear from all of you, meaning parents and stakeholders, and anyone else who wants to give input on this plan. Already, the PUSD team has met with school principals, labor partners, our students. We have an amazing group called the Student Think Tank. We've talked to parent leaders and community partners and parent councils, as well as other committees. And while we want this to be a comprehensive and inclusive process, I want to take this time to make it clear that our efforts to position our students for success, especially after the events of the past year, will not stop with the summer learning activities. You know, even prior to the pandemic, we have been exploring new ways to help all of our students be on a path to success. And the key question that we're asking ourselves is, how can we help students with learning gaps who are struggling academically and socio-emotionally succeed today? This means, of course, that our focus will shift to accelerating students as opposed to remediating them. So again, thank you for being here, and I look forward to a productive evening together. And with that, I will now turn it over to Dr. Leslie Barnes, our Chief Finance and Facilities Officer. Dr. Barnes.
Thank you, Dr. McDonald. Again, my name is Leslie Barnes, and I'm the Chief Finance and Operations Officer for the district. I'm here tonight to give you a brief overview of the COVID relief funds the districts received or will be receiving next year. PUSD has received several $million in state and federal funding through various COVID relief bills signed by both President Trump and President Biden and the Governor of California. When the pandemic first began, Congress approved the CARES Act, which provided funding for schools. These funds came to the district as the Governor's Emergency Education Relief Funds, also known as GEAR, Coronavirus Relief Funds, known as CRF, and Elementary Secondary Schools Emergency Relief Fund, known as ESSER funds. The state also provided funding through Senate Bill 98 and Senate Bill 117. Originally, the federal relief funds had a very short deadline to have the money spent. Although many of the dates were eventually extended, the extension came right before the deadline was up. Therefore, most of the original funds have been fully spent. The state and federal funds were spent on providing technology and software to students and staff as we transition to learning and working from home, providing hotspots to students, providing meals to the community, paying for additional sanitation and cleaning supplies, and personal protective gear for students and staff who are participating in small learning pods or the LEARNS program. These programs also needed substitute staff to provide help when regular staff was not available. As the pandemic continued, Congress passed 2 additional stimulus relief bills. The second stimulus bill was called the Coronavirus Response and Relief Supplemental Appropriations, or CRISA Act. This provided a second round of elementary secondary school emergency relief funding, now known as ESSER 2, and additional governor's emergency education relief funds, known as GEAR 2 funding. These funds have only been partially spent. There hasn't been any spending of the GEAR 2 funds. We don't know what that amount will be. And the ESSER 2 funds have been about 15% has been spent. They were used to help prepare the sites for the students and staff to return. Examples of these items were the purchase of thermometers, plexiglass, signage, air purifiers, extra hourly staff to ensure students maintain social distancing at recess and as they enter and leave campus, additional substitute staff to provide coverage for staff who were unable to return. The third stimulus bill is known as the American Rescue Plan, or ARP, and provides additional funds to schools in the form of elementary secondary school relief, emergency relief funds, now called ESSER 3. We anticipate these funds will come in the next school year, with 20% required to be used for academic purposes and 80% available for facilities-related issues and maintaining the health and safety of students and staff. The state legislature has also provided 2 additional grants through the passage of Assembly Bill 86 to help schools prepare for returning to in-person learning and to help students who may have fallen behind during distance learning. The in-person instruction grant helped to fund the required air conditioning inspections and repairs and outside air readings for each classroom. It also helped to pay for immunization clinics and testing and contact tracing. AB 86 also included the grant that we're here to talk about this evening, which is the Expanded Learning Opportunities Grant, known as ELO. The deadline to spend the grant funds is August 31st of 2022, and the amount of the grant is $11.5 million. We currently have not spent any of the funds. The grant requires that the district seek parent input on how the funds should be spent and have the board approve a plan by June 1st, 2021. Dr. Rennie will discuss the various ways that staff has engaged parents in the community and discuss the strategies that have been generated from this engagement. However, we are here tonight to seek additional input on these strategies to ensure they meet the goals of our students. The Expanding Learning Opportunities Grant funds are to be used for supplemental instruction and support, which includes expanding learning time by extending the school year or day, or otherwise generally increasing the amount of instruction time services provided. Learning supports, such as tutoring or similar small group instruction, learning recovery programs, and training on accelerated learning strategies. Integrated pupil supports, which would be health, counseling, mental health, and social and emotional learning.
Y aprendizaje emocional durante lo que ha estado pasando.
Community learning hubs include access to technology and connectivity, support to help credit deficient students graduate, which would be credit recovery, additional academic services such as diagnostic assessments or progress monitoring, training for school staff in the subjects of social emotional health and academic needs of students, and 10% must be spent on paraprofessionals, which would include instructional aides or tutors. One thing that I want to remind you of is that these are one-time funds. This means that once they're spent, they're gone. Sustainability of any strategies is important to consider when making recommendations. Therefore, it's not recommended that the districts hire full-time staff with one-time money, since when the funds are gone, the employees will need to be laid off. Thank you. Now, I will turn it over to Dr. Rennie.
Thank you, Dr. Barnes. Good evening, everyone. My name is Dr. David Rennie. I am the Academics Data Facilitator and Interim Support for state and federal programs. And I am first going to provide just a general timeline of some milestones in our engagement for developing the Expanded Learning Opportunities Plan. And it really started with the passage of Assembly Bill 86 by the California State Legislature, which created two separate funding sources that Dr. Barnes just discussed, one being the in-person learning grant, which did not require the construction of any plan by school districts, and then a second source of funding called the Expanded Learning Opportunities Grant, or ELO. And on March 25th, the California Department of Education finalized their version of the planning template for the use of the ELO grant, which is the template that all California school districts are required to use for the development of their ELO plan. Over the course of April and May is really where we as a district are engaging our various stakeholder groups in engagement processes to really inform how we should prioritize and begin to look at strategies that are going to be most effective in providing supports that our students within Pasadena Unified are most in need of. On May 13th, we are pairing the presentation of our academics accelerated learning plan alongside with our extended learning opportunities plan to the school board so that we would be able to have a larger contextualization really about how the work that we've already engaged in through our diversity, equity, and inclusion lens and framework are really in step with the development of our expanded learning opportunities plan. And in state statute, it is required that as a condition of accepting the expanded learning opportunities grant, that each local school district does adopt formally at a public meeting of the local school board the expanded learning opportunities plan by June 1st, recognizing that our local school board had already scheduled a regular business meeting for May 27th. We have set May 27th as our target date for asking our board to review and formally adopt the ELO plan. A little bit of background around how Pasadena Unified received these $11.5 million is really based on two factors that were written into the statute that was constructed when Assembly Bill 86 was passed. The first part of this is where they look at the number of homeless students that are served within the school district, and the school district receives a flat dollar amount of the funds based off of just that one factor. The remaining amount is then awarded based on what percentage of the entire state's education budget Pasadena Unified receives as part of the state's local control funding formula, or LCFF. Overall, Pasadena Unified receives about 6.9% of the entire state budget through, or not state budget, but the local control funding formula budget. And so after all of the apportionments were made based on homeless student counts, Pasadena Unified received 6.9% of whatever funds were remaining. And that is how we arrive at the total of $11.5 million. Within that, though, there is a 10% set aside specifically for using paraprofessional services that are prioritized for in-person services for English learners and students with exceptional needs. And then another reservation or requirement is that 85% of that total 11.5 million must be utilized for delivering services and supports for in-person learning, not just supplementing distance learning, but really honing in on that these needed to be delivered in an in-person setting where students are in the physical presence of certificated adults that are driving instruction. In terms of the plan and how it was developed in terms of both the planning template and the allowability of expenditures, the areas that are the broad categories for your expanded learning opportunity plan development are listed on the left in purple, and you can see that they are 7 areas that school districts were told you do not need to address all 7 areas in the construction of your expanded learning opportunities plan. Rather, these are the 7 allowable channels that all services and supports should fall under as you're developing your expanded learning opportunities plan. And then along with that, looking at what student groups should be prioritized and should be the primary beneficiaries of the expanded learning opportunity grant, they did outline our student groups, which are typically outlined as those student groups that are most at promise within California, as well as disengaged students. And disengaged students was not defined formally in the statute, nor was it defined in the expanded learning opportunities planning template. So given that, Pasadena Unified, we have approached the idea of disengaged students really by using 2 separate proxies or 2 separate ways to identify who may potentially be a disengaged student. One of them is our attendance monitoring that we normally engage in, and students who are at risk or are chronically absent would be one form of disengagement. The second proxy or way that we've been identifying disengagement is through the other route, which may be students who are not chronically absent, but may be engaging in academic coursework, but not submitting the actual assignments for grades. And as a result, are receiving D's and F's, not because of low academic performance, but because there is no type of assessment or work that demonstrates mastery. And so we do not have an accurate gauge of what that student's performance actually is. We're flagging that as another form of disengagement. And then the last group is actually a very broad category of students who are below grade level in proficiencies, but it also includes students who did not enroll in traditional classrooms or school settings during their kindergarten year for this current school year. As well, we're also looking at students that may be credit deficient or high school students that are at risk of not graduating on time. And then the last clause is actually other students identified by certificated staff. So while there are these indicators that are written into the actual definition of prioritized students, it does not mean that that is the only way for students to be identified for supports. If there are supports that we are developing and other certificated staff are able to say this is a support that would benefit a student, that student has been identified as a student who can benefit from that support. And so there's a very broad allowability for us to provide services to almost any student within Pasadena Unified, provided that there is a need and we have a support that would meet that need. One of the plan requirements that is embedded both into the statute and into the planning template is that all of our services and supports really should be designed and delivered through a multi-system layer of supports, or a multi-tiered system of supports, MTSS. And MTSS, for any individuals that may be unfamiliar with it, really is a way of describing how you are defining supports and services that impact the needs of all students, which we would refer to as universal services and supports, or tier 1 supports. And then supports that may be more targeted when students are in need of additional help. So to factor this in, you may think of this as tutoring services. Any student who goes to a school in Pasadena Unified has access to after-school tutoring. So that would be a tier 1 support. There's no requirement that the student demonstrate a need for it. It's just automatically there and they can access it just because the support is needed. Tier 2 would be where it is a little bit more targeted in that now it may be a directed support where it could look like a classroom teacher actually identifying that a student who has been going to after-school tutoring may need just a little bit more targeted, focused instruction in a smaller group setting. And so may actually work with that student one-on-one during class time, or may strategically place that group or that student into a group of maybe 3 other students so that the teacher can work with a group of 4 students on the same skill set. And that would be a targeted support embedded into the school day. Our next layer of support, which would be intensive support, is really what we refer to as tier 3 within the multi-system layer of supports, or multi-tiered system of supports. That third tier is really unique for each case of students, because now it is so intensive that we are getting to the conversation level of what are the specific needs that this specific student has for this specific class or source of need. And it doesn't necessarily have to be academic. It could also be social emotional. It can be the fact that if the student was a disengaged student, that it may rise to the level of, well, there's transportation issues, there's housing issues, and that is where our system of supports would then seek out help through our community partners, as well as our own internal support structures, to provide and connect the family and the student with any supports that would be defined as tier 3 supports for the family and the student. In terms of how we have engaged stakeholders in defining what strategies to begin building out within our multi-tiered system of supports, the Special Projects State and Federal Programs Department has coordinated meetings both internally with our district leadership team, as well as externally with some of our various labor partner groups and community partner groups and stakeholder groups, such as family engagement, our district advisory councils. And through that, we've actually been gathering feedback and input from multiple sources that are able to then be coordinated with each other. We've already asked our principals to put forward considerations that we should be thinking through, both at a prioritization level as well as an implementation level. We've also been folding this work into our LCAP consultations for our labor partners, where we coordinate with our CSEA labor partners, our United Teachers of Pasadena labor partners, and begin to unearth suggestions of how we can implement this or other ways that we should be prioritizing these funds to make sure that as we're doing this, that we are working with our labor partners, not just on our labor partners. We've also had an opportunity to meet with our student think tank and really gather information from a student's perspective of what supports have been effective, what supports have not necessarily been as effective. And it's also opened up a very unique treasure trove of opportunity because the student think tank has done a very phenomenal job of advocating for their peers and being able to say, this is what may benefit the person who's sitting behind me, next to me, or wasn't there today, but I saw them there at some point and I know that they are struggling. And that has just been an added dimension to this. Specifically within our family and parent engagement office, they've been working tirelessly to coordinate some actions with our Local Control and Accountability Plan Parent Advisory Council, also called our LCAP PAC, our District Advisory Council, as well as our District English Learner Advisory Committee, where we did have a chance to present a very rough outline of the details of the Expanded Learning Opportunities Plan and really launch the gathering of our parent input. Tonight, the town hall meeting is another opportunity for us to hear questions and to broadcast channels for you to be able to give us input. And I cannot stress this enough that while this plan is being adopted by June 1st, that does not mean this is the final version of the plan. There is nothing in state statute that says that if the plan needs to undergo a major revision based on input from stakeholders and the needs of students, that a revised version of the plan can be constructed and presented to the Board of Education and readopted. It's just that the initial plan does need to be adopted by the school board prior or by June 1st. So we will be presenting to the Board of Education as well and seeking their input and feedback on that presentation, which will be on May 13th. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Reynoso.
Thanks, Dr. Rennie. I think you covered so much fascinating information, and I think it'll be very helpful for everyone. Good evening. My name is Julianne Reynoso. I work in the Instructional Services Division under Academics, and we're pleased to come to you tonight to respond to the needs that so many of our students will have and might have at this time, and we'll be able to do this through this grant. This is an incredible opportunity. So I want to share with you a little bit about what the summer supports will look like for our Pasadena Unified School District students. I first want to begin by thanking all of the families in Pasadena Unified for participating in our Spring 2021 Interest Summer Survey. This allowed for us to gauge, as we were getting respondents, about what will be best for our students. How do we develop our programs to meet needs? How do we develop the needs through the day? And I am proud to say that through all of that, what I will share with you briefly tonight is just a snippet of what will be offered. In our 2021 learning opportunities for the summer of 2021, our focus this year will be academics, connectedness, and enrichment. And all of our programs that have been developed and are being finalized will encompass all of this. For example, one of the ideas that Dr. Rennie mentioned is our students that may be in need of credit recovery. And so through one of the opportunities this summer, we will be offering 2 separate types of credit recovery. In the past, we were only able to offer 1. Now we're able to offer 2 to meet the needs of our students. 1 will be during the day. It'll be a 5-week opportunity, and it happens throughout the day. Our second opportunity are for students and families who have a different type of schedule, but will get the same opportunity to recover their credits. It's called Twilight, and it happens in the afternoon from about 4 to 7:30. These teachers, these educators, these admin that come along to support these students are skilled and are prepared to work with our students in creative and performance-based ways. It is not like a regular classroom. We have not designed these types of programs where they just come in and take tests and quizzes. Rather, it's an opportunity for our students to experience and master content in a very enriched and supportive environment, most especially through relationships, trust, and connectedness. We are proud that we've had a pilot program this past spring, and the results are showing to be very promising. So we know that moving forward through this grant and these types of offers, they will be supportive of our students. I also want to take the time to thank all of the partners who have come alongside us, jumped in and said, what can we do to support your students? I also want to thank all of our principals, site leadership, and district leadership for coming alongside and saying, which are the students that need us most? And they have become our priority, always and forever through this grant and moving forward, that we hope that we turn practice into sustainable opportunity for our students. And finally, what I want to share on this particular slide is I would like to point out that we have launched our summer catalog. So if you've not had an opportunity to view that, we definitely make sure that you look for that. It is on our website, and it is all hosted through all of our site websites as well. So please make sure to take a peek at that and find a program that works best for your families. Next slide. So, for example, through the Expanded Learning Opportunity Grant, one of the things that we're going to be looking at is extended learning time. As Dr. Barnes and Dr. Rennie both mentioned, we can either extend the school year or extend opportunity. And at this time, we're extending learning time. And some of the options that we're looking at this summer are through Pasadena Learns. We are looking at Skills and Ready 21. We're looking at our PEF Summer Enrichment Program. We are looking at training our professionals, our paraprofessionals, to come alongside all of these programs and throughout the following year to make sure that these families and students have exactly what they need, which is, again, academics, connectedness, enrichment, and well-being. We are proud to also think about what happens after the summer. Well, via the success and the opportunity to always look at what can we improve, we continuously look at, well, what else might work? And we also know, as you will hear from my colleague in a moment, about accelerated learning. We also will be looking at various ways to provide tutoring in that mechanism, but more to come on that later. Through our accelerating progress to closing student achievement gaps, as I've mentioned, we will be training our paraprofessionals so they will be working intensely, purposely, and alongside our students to provide opportunity once again. We will be looking at tutoring populations that we will identify via criteria that has been established. And again, we will be looking at multiple ways to provide the students that need us most to get back on track for graduation will have opportunity for credit recovery. Our purpose is meaningful. We have identified who those students are, and we have developed the programs to find them and get them engaged. And we count on all of our sites to support our students to apply for those programs. And in the school year, again, these students will be supported by our paraprofessionals and the academic support for our English language learners and special populations. And finally, when you look at integrated student supports, we also know that through many different venues, through our special education and various academic departments, we are looking at our speech pathologists, we are looking at our psychologists, we are looking at our health clerks and our nurses, and we are looking at our social workers. They must come alongside us to support this, to make it sure that is a well-rounded opportunity for our students. Our next slide. In this particular slide, I wanted just to point out again, and you hear me keep talking about this, but what will we do for our students who may have fallen behind, especially during this last year? I can assure you that we have developed programs based on student need, first and foremost. Our priority are our students to graduate, and then any student beyond that. We have identified who those students are, and our programs are built to support the student. We have incredible educators that will come alongside, and we know that providing college access to our students and also looking at exploratory opportunities as well as career purpose, we want to make sure that all of that is intended both for the summer and moving forward in the school year of next year. Our additional academic services will include multiple digital resources that any student who may not want to participate in one of our programs, no worries. We're going to find other opportunities for you to get involved. We have a plethora of apps and resources, all digitally accessed. And the great news is that all of your students will have their Chromebooks so that they can access this from home or from a place of comfort. Throughout the next year, we also will continue to provide those physical access to students, both in the math and literacy specific. And finally, for school staff on training, we are looking at making sure that our staff and our students have what they need when it comes to social emotional learning. My colleague, Dr. Sahakian, will be going into depth with that in a moment, but we want to make sure that that is also integrated into all of our programs this summer and moving forward. And once again, I will not emphasize this enough. Everyone must be trained in order for an impact to be realized. The transformation is real, and we must make sure that everyone is on the same page and is ready to serve our students. We are excited about the multiple options that we have provided and that we have developed. And again, our students have been our reason, and they are the greatest purpose we have. At this time, I'd like to introduce my colleague, Mrs. Helen Hill.
Thank you, Dr. Reynoso. That's a perfect segue because what Dr. Reynoso referred to as the foundation is really what I wanted to share with you for the approach that we have, not just for this summer, but moving forward. And that really is the foundational training that we have of our teachers, our paraprofessionals, our administrators, and anyone involved with instruction. Really, it is not because anything is shifting in terms of the seismic pendulum swing, but that we have a much more laser-like focus now on what needs to be addressed, what needs to be prioritized, and how we're going to do it. So you've heard a few times throughout the presentation the term accelerated learning. It's something that is actually formally used as a strategy in the Expanded Learning Opportunities Grant, but it's been around for a lot longer than just this grant. So the accelerated learning approach is an instructional method that really serves the opposite of what remediation and intervention have been doing. It says exactly what the name implies, which is accelerating things so that students' rate of growth and progress really picks up the pace. And we have to do that in a very strategic way. This isn't rushing kids through things. This is being very mindful and intentional about what are the essential things that they need to learn, and then how do we fill in the gaps of learning points that may have been missed beforehand. But at the end of the day, when we approach things with an accelerated learning mindset, students are given access to their grade level expectations. And so we have a lot of work to do in training ourselves and learning best practices in utilizing this in the classroom. But as you'll see here, there are a variety of resources as well as structures that we're going to be building in to make sure that we can support this, since it is such a pervasive and widespread need now. We additionally are having some curricular supports that are being focused on now, because if we want to make sure that we can reach everyone's needs, we also need to adjust the way that our curriculum reads. That's really essentially pulling out the key standards that are high leverage to make sure that students get the things that are the most important, and then of course things that come before, but also making sure that the curriculum is respectful and mindful of the students so that they want to engage in it. Another thing that we've really had a lot of thought about this year is how the vast inequities in our school system really became apparent during the pandemic. And we want to make sure that our curriculum takes that into account and makes sure that we are responsive when our students really come back to us fully, and even now. Additionally, you're going to see that Dr. Rennie had spoken earlier about the student curriculum think tank. We are utilizing their support and their input as we continue forward, because they have brought to light a lot of things that really help them that maybe sometimes I don't think about from my vantage point, that are beyond just what they learn in the classroom, but maybe how they are interacting in the classroom, things that are happening after school. So with that, you'll see that we are also looking at after school re-engagement programs. We have a wonderful structure that's already in existence with our extended day programs. And they have really taken the charge and are going to be implementing accelerated learning practices in their summer programs that were just described by Dr. Reynoso. So working with them and in tandem with our arts and enrichment department, we're going to be able to provide some re-engagement opportunities that are beyond the school day as well. And then finally, we want to make sure that we have some specific supports that are for students. We're going to continue paper tutoring. I know that that service has been utilized by many students. I know it's not for every student, but we are also going to make sure that we can try to have live tutors as well. That might work better for some students, but paper will be available 24/7 for all of our, I believe, 3rd grade and up students. Additionally, we're going to have some teacher support with the continued use of our coaches in class and teaching artists and some special or specific expertise in that area. And then our progress monitoring. You'll already know as parents that our students have been utilizing the iReady platform to get differentiation. We are going to train into and expand more how we utilize that data so that teachers can really hone in on individual needs and work with students in smaller groups or maybe even in individual ways that are supported by our workshop model and very much by the data that comes out of the iReady system. Next slide. I'm also going to share with you what my colleagues over at the LAD, the Language Assessment and Development Department, are also planning, because they are working hand in hand with us to make sure that the curriculum is also accessible and appropriate for our English language learners. They are likewise supporting the literacy efforts this summer through the PEF program and the Panda Academy. They're also providing live in-person tutoring because that is a customization that works best for their students or for our students. And then also working really heavily in that workshop model that allows for teachers to really meet the needs of students, whether it is a language, English specific need, or if it's academic vocabulary that's specific to the content area. It will allow teachers to have that structure to work with students in English language development. I also wanted to point out that they are supporting beyond just the PEF program, the credit recovery programs, to make sure that we are providing graduation and college access opportunities to students. And then finally, that next year they will be bringing in some bilingual aids to have more intentional support of students, and also our LPAT testing, which allows for our ELD teachers to have more expanded time to meet the needs of students instructionally. With that, I know you want to hear about special education, so I'll pass it on to my colleague, Dr. Villegas.
Thank you, Ms. Hill. Good evening, everyone. I'm Dr. Marco Villegas, Associate Superintendent of Specialized Student Support. I'm glad to be here tonight. One of the things that I want to start with is just a reminder that our special education students are general education students first. And they really spend a lot of the time in special education environments. As a matter of fact, about 60% of our students receive over 50% of their instructional time in general education environments. And to that end, all of the great things that have been planned for our general education students apply for our special education students. And so they're able to access all of the things that you've heard. And if they're EL, they're able to get some of the EL supports as well. But in addition to that, some of the things that we're specifically doing for our students with special needs is, even though they're able to access some of those other interventions and accelerations, we're looking at working with instructional assistants. And as you heard earlier, part of the grant is to have additional instructional assistants, so that would allow for additional small group instruction and target their IEPs, and so that the instructional assistants are trained so that they're able to identify and support their IEP goals. And that would happen during the summer. We're also looking at that continuing throughout the school year so that they're able to have small group and more targeted support that, as we said, we're going to have that laser-like focus on the various gaps and needs that they have, and we're able to provide them more support with more smaller groups. The other piece is it's a speech and language pathologist, and it's really just having additional support that will provide services for students. For example, speech is one aspect of it, but it's going to be psychologists, it's going to be all service providers. We're going to be able to hire additional staff that can provide some of the services that were missed during the school year. Perhaps maybe they didn't have the amount of time that they would have had otherwise. With additional support, additional staffing that we will be getting, we will be able to meet some of those goals that maybe were not met as a result of not being in school during this school year. And so that we're excited about the opportunity of being able to bring additional staff that's going to provide that extra support to our students. Additionally, we're looking at some programs that are going to be very helpful in accelerating the language development. One's called from the George School, the Allegra Learning, and another one, a Summer Language Academy, that are both instrumental in helping in reading supports or in language development. Also, a big part of this is parenting classes. You know, we really think that it's crucial for us to support our parents, to give them additional ideas and tools to be able to support their students at home. And so we're really excited about the opportunity of having ongoing parent classes that will allow parents to have additional ways that they can support their students at home. And certainly one of the pieces that we haven't been able to do in the same level that we had in the past is provide the assessments for students who are potentially initial students with disabilities. And so we are very excited about the opportunity to bring additional staff that's going to be able to provide additional psychoeducational evaluations to our students. And we're going to have more in the summer, but also during the school year, we need to have additional psychologists and staff, that assessors, that can help us identify students with special needs. So next slide. Additionally, the idea of credit support, and so we are planning to have an instructional assistant supporting both the middle school and high schools, just in various capacities, but certainly with the high schools and students who need credit support or who are going to be in credit recovery type of environments. They will be able to have instructional assistants that can support them. They can give them additional scaffolding and different ways of helping them be successful. So it's not just the ability of accessing these credit recovery programs, but to have additional support during the summer and throughout the year. Same thing with elementary supports and administration of IEPs. That's going to be additional staffing that can help us not only after we assess the students and we identify that there's a need for a special education, but we're able to have those IEPs. Because again, there's numerous amounts of students that were not able to be assessed. We're going to be able to catch up and give them additional support and identifying them at an earlier time. Also, again, with parent biliteracy curriculum training, we're looking at having training for our parents. Find that that's a really important piece. We've heard some feedback from our parent groups that indicate they want to have additional training to help them support their students at home. A big piece of this is also behavior academic intervention training for our instructional assistants. As we're looking at hiring different people, we want to be able to have them have the capacity to be able to be effective with our students. So we're looking at having some trainings throughout the year so that they have the skill set so that they're able to intervene successfully with our students. And that essentially, along with all the other things that we're going to be doing with our general education students, are parts of the pieces that we're going to be doing with our special education students. And now for the next slide, I'd like to introduce Dr. Sahakian.
Thank you, Dr. Villegas. Good evening. Eric Sahakian, Assistant Superintendent of Student Wellness and Support Services for PUSD. We're looking to expand and enhance our social emotional learning opportunities, SEL for short, over summer, as well as for the 21-22 academic year. We identify SEL supports and interventions by 3 tiers. Tier 1 supports are considered universal supports, whereby the entire student body receives support and basic interventions. Tier 2 is considered targeted interventions, target support for smaller groups or for individual students. Tier 3 is considered intensive individualized support. At this tier, a student is identified for interventions given that they did not respond to interventions and supports in the Tier 1 or Tier 2 level. At Tier 3, assistance from outside agencies, such as counseling, may become an option. As part of integrated support, we are looking to expand SEL over summer through our existing social and emotional curriculum, Second Step. The newly added curriculum from Second Step is titled Out of School Time and is geared for grades K through 5 and will be facilitated through our Summer Learns program. The K-5 program is designed to develop kids' social and emotional competencies in a playful and meaningful way. This would be considered Tier 1. In addition, during the summer, we are looking to provide 6th through 12th grade students a digital SEL curriculum titled Heartbeat. This would also continue through the 21-22 academic calendar. Our secondary students would have an opportunity to self-assess how they are feeling 2 to 3 times a week on their own personalized student board, where they can navigate the questions at their own pace. Teachers could review student insights by classroom or by individual student. Teachers will then have access to a library of activities, journal prompts, and conversation starters as needed, dependent on need. This offering is considered a Tier 1 intervention. As part of Tier 2 and Tier 3 interventions, the Wyman's Group Teen Connection Project, TCP for short, is intended for our 9th through 12th grades. TCP works with identified students through a 12-week curriculum ranging in topics from problem solving, decision making, and goal setting. Professional development for facilitation would be planned for the summer months. Now, I'd like to turn it over to PUSD's Director for Innovative Technology Services. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sahakian. Good evening, everyone. My name is Julie Hurst, and I am the Director of Instructional Technology for PUSD. And tonight I am pleased to represent the ITS department. ITS plans to provide integrated student support by continuing to provide hotspots and Chromebooks for student use during the summer Extended Learning Opportunity Program. In the fall, ITS plans to provide every student with a more robust Chromebook capable of running all of our educational technology applications. In addition to providing devices, ITS is providing 140 hours of summer innovator support, 70 hours each summer. The innovators will provide tech support to teachers, students, and parents, will offer training on the educational technology applications used in PUSD, and will provide model lessons in the area of integrating technology. In addition to providing integrated student support, ITS will support the area of staff training on SEL and academic strategies, to engage students and families by providing 20 hours of professional development in the areas of using technology to increase student engagement, learning outcomes, and social emotional well-being. At this time, I will turn the mic over to Dr. Rennie, who will acknowledge our partners in education.
And thank you so much for that, Julie. I cannot stress this enough, and I just want to say to all of our partners who literally in the matter of the blink of an eye helped to put this town hall together and who have really taken on the Herculean effort of piecing together our summer intervention supports, our strategies, and really being strategic thought partners through all of this. It would be remiss of Pasadena Unified staff if we did not acknowledge the work that you've put into this. Collaborate Pasadena, Pasadena Educational Foundation, the City of Pasadena, Learns, and Stimulate. All of you have been phenomenal partners throughout this process, and I just cannot stress how grateful I personally am, and I would like to extend on behalf of PUSD all of the thanks and gratitude that you deserve, and just make sure that we take the time in this space to acknowledge that to the broader community. Thank you, thank you, thank you a million times over.
Right. Well, thank you all to the presenters, and thank you for our guests for your patience at the beginning. We were originally planning on ending this at 7:30, but since there was a delay, we're going to go till 7:45. So that gives us about 40 minutes of questions. Please send your questions to www.pusd.us/questions. We'll also post that into the chat so you can click on that. And we might not get to every question today, but we will compile them into questions and then post them to the frequently asked questions page at pusd.us town hall. And so we have the presenters and panelists that will be fielding the questions to, and as we field the questions to them, we ask them to unmute themselves. And so I'd like to introduce the LCAP PAC chair, Lorena Hernandez, who will be fielding the questions that have been submitted so far.
Thank you, Jeff. Our first question is for Dr. Blanco, and it's regarding academic programs and learning. And the question is the district utilizing funds to target students with high needs, such as providing transportation, after-school care, meals, PPE, and safety protocols?
So part of the reason why you haven't seen some of the items that you've mentioned in the plan is because they will be provided, but they're provided through other resources, such as the PPE for safety of the summer programs and the summer meal program. In terms of transportation, we will be providing that for our students with IEPs as part of their IEP. We worked with our partners to locate programs throughout the city so they're accessible to all students, that there isn't a far distance to travel before they would be able to attend a program. And in terms of the childcare, we are going to be working with our community partners and letting our families know what is accessible to them in terms of programs such as the Boys and Girls Club, the YMCA, and the city parks and recreation programs. So that's an area that we really will be leaning on our community to provide additional childcare resources. In past years, we've been able to house and have some of these programs join us on our campuses due to, the COVID situation and spacing out more. We have limited space to be able to do that this year. If there's somebody who really needs to know what services are accessible, they can reach out to me, the Family Engagement Center, Dr. Reynoso, and we'll try to help them find the resources to get childcare.
Wonderful. Thank you, Dr. Blanco. Lorena, do you have the next question?
Yes, the next question is for Dr. Reynoso. And for kindergartners, their first school experience was via distance learning, challenging at best. Will there be an in-person summer learning program geared towards catch-up instruction so these kids can be successful in first grade?
That's a great question. I love that. Well, first I want to refer whoever our asker was or anyone who's interested in this particular information. My passion is early childhood, and I know the importance of wanting to make sure our children have a firm foundation before they start school. So I definitely want to make sure that I invite everyone to look at our catalog. We definitely are offering opportunities from preschool all the way through 5th grade. So any child who may have not had that incredible opportunity to be in person with us this year for a variety of reasons, whether you chose to be remote or just had other options in your life, I definitely invite you to look at our catalog and look at those options, because we definitely made sure that we had a variety, both in native language, if it's a Mandarin program or a Spanish program. We definitely want to make sure that you look at what those offerings are and look to see what fits your family best. And the other option that you mentioned, Lorena, was what does this look like for in-person? So most of our programs, with the exception of the credit recovery programs, are going to be in person. So we're really excited about that because we know that that's an experiential opportunity that just cannot be replaced. Thank you for the question.
Thank you, Dr. Reynoso. Lorena, next question.
It's for Dr. Blanco. And the question is, could this money be used to provide struggling students with individual learning plans that include goals and progress benchmarks for every student?
Yes, the money could be used that way, but we're already planning those types of strategies. Dr. Reynoso has been working on a SST program, Student Study Team program, that will allow us to create individual personal learning plans for any student that needs that as a Tier 3 intervention that interfaces with our student information system, ARIES. And so what's unique about having it in our student information system is that any teacher the child has will be able to locate the information later. We have had personal support plans for our English learners and foster youth for many years. And I think one of the challenges that we've run across is like, where do we house it to make sure that the next teacher is able to access that information and know what strategies work for the child. We've also had personal learning support plans for our students who are in the low performing student block grant program. So I think that this new opportunity of keeping them in one place, in a safe, secure place, will allow us to do the other areas that you've asked with the monitoring of progress and seeing how they're progressing as they move through our educational system.
Wonderful. Thank you, Dr. Blanco. Lorena, next question.
The next question is for Dr. Villegas. Are any funds being allocated for direct services with children and youth with learning needs, such as IEP, such as the law?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think some of the things that you heard, as mentioned earlier, looking at the support from the instructional assistants, the additional support providers with the speech pathologists and psychologists, all of those are direct services for our students with special needs. So this will allow many of the students who maybe did not have access to the special needs during this pandemic time to have additional times that they ordinarily wouldn't have had. So absolutely, yes, this allows us for us to be able to do that throughout the year.
Thank you, Dr. Villegas. Lorena, next question.
This question is for Dr. Blanco. Our African-American students have historically been underachieving in a variety of metrics. How might we use these funds to support their outcomes?
So I hope everyone can turn into our presentation this Thursday on accelerated learning, where we'll go more into depth about the theory and concept and how we plan to achieve that. But Mrs. Hill is the expert, and she can add to my answer in terms of what we're doing for students that have had longer opportunity gaps as well as achievement gaps. And part of the reason that that's occurred is because we need to teach children our grade level standards at the same time that we're helping them fill in skills that they might be missing. And that hasn't always been the way that we've approached teaching and learning. So Mrs. Hill, would you like to add to that answer?
Sure, though I will say that Dr. Blanco, you cover everything so thoroughly. That is essentially the crux of it. But I would definitely say with our African-American students, we need to actually create some specific supports, in the sense that we do know that we have historically underserved, and it has nothing to do with their ability. It has a lot to do with our access and our perception and things like that from a systemic level. And so over the past few years, we have participated in professional development series, most notably the African American Student Success Initiative, which sunset over 5 years ago. And we would really like to make sure that we continue in that vein. We have a significant amount of support and advocacy from our African American families, and some great ideas that are coming out of it. What I think that we really need to do is listen and implement from the perspective of the students and from the families. The perspective that we have around accelerated learning really is about closing achievement gaps, because the belief that we have here is that there are no gaps created by our children. They are gaps created by the systemic way that we deliver the curriculum or provide access to the curriculum. So one of the steps that we are also taking is doing a full curriculum review, which we are beginning because we have to do it in bite-sized pieces with our social sciences and our language arts curriculum, making sure that students see themselves in our curriculum, that they feel respected and represented in the curriculum, and beginning to make sure that we also diversify what students are seeing as windows and mirrors in their texts, in their experiences during the school day. And then in addition, we have a recent board approval of our ethnic studies course, which will be implemented at the high schools. It is just one course, but we hope that it's the start to a more integrated way of looking at the way that we represent our student voices and represent the people that our students represent. So that's more to come, I think, beyond just Thursday night, but we'll definitely speak more about it at the board meeting.
Thank you, Ms. Hill and Dr. Blanco. Lorena, next question.
The next question is for Dr. Blanco and or Ms. Maria Toliver. Kids enrolled in immersion programs were at a significant disadvantage by not being able to be in person with their teachers. Can some of the funds be used to provide after-school supplemental learning options?
So that is one of the reasons that the PANDA program at San Rafael is launching, and we will be working with Ms. Tolliver to create some additional opportunities in our after-school programs during the year. So I will let her speak to that.
Good evening. Wonderful question. Thank you, Dr. Blanco. And yes, you answered the question spot on. We are looking for opportunities to engage and support students in the dual language immersion programs this summer, as well as during the school year, specifically bringing on board credentialed teachers in particular subject areas to support students to make sure that they are having an opportunity to close those learning gaps and make up some of the learning that that they had challenges with over the past year due to the pandemic. So we are looking at ways to support students after school, specifically as it relates to literacy, math, and also their DLIP languages that they're learning as well. That's a wonderful question. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Tolliver. Maria.
The next question is for Dr. Reynoso. Can money be used to provide financial education classes, maybe in high school, as they could be very beneficial and practical, especially right now?
Oh, I love that question. I have 3 high schoolers. I think they would benefit greatly from that opportunity. First and foremost, I want to point out that in our district, we take great pride in the academies and pathways that we offer to students. So I first want to point out that at John Muir High School, we offer our business and entrepreneurship, which is financial based and is an incredible opportunity. So if you haven't already checked that out, please make sure that you sign up for a tour with Dr. Gray and his team. Please go check that out, because financial literacy is valuable for any student, but I just want to point out that we have something in play at this time. However, what I am interested in looking at further when I saw this question is looking at what would be ways in which that we could actually build upon this topic within course settings already. So this would be something that I would want to take to our course codes committees, as well as our site leadership at the high schools, to see where would this fit in? How would this make the most sense? If there was any type of an elective or after school opportunity, I am definitely in and very interested. So I don't have all the answers at this time, other than to give a shout out to my Mustangs. I'm willing to explore further. Thank you for that question.
I would also like to add that we've done a big push for FAFSA, especially after we heard at Collaborate that we didn't have as many students applying as usual. And that has a lot of financial literacy built into the application process for getting additional funds for college. It really brings our students through an experience to understand what it happens if you borrow money or you're granted money. And I know that Dr. Reynoso and Dr. Turley really worked with our counselors to get more students involved in that process.
Thank you, Dr. Reynoso and Dr. Blanco. Lorena, next question.
Next question is also for Dr. Blanco, and it is, can DLIP schools have target language speaking instructional aids for next year to make up for oral language learning losses? Otherwise, only families with the ability to supplement their child's target language will be able to stay on track.
Sure, that is possible. And I would like to also turn it over to Mr. Rellis if he would like to add with some of the plans that we have for instructional assistants working with LAD next year.
Good evening. Thank you, Dr. Blanco. That is an excellent question. As had mentioned, was mentioned actually in the onset of the presentation from Dr. Barnes and Dr. Rennie, 10% has been set aside for the hiring of paraprofessionals. Paraprofessionals are going to be trained not only in the interventions and supports for our English learners, but also the English learners that are at our target schools, meaning the schools that also provide language proficiency programs. As we know, when students are identified as an English learner, the parents have choice in the language proficiency program that they may choose, which does include our dual language schools. So a parent that may choose a dual language schools such as San Rafael, Jackson, Longfellow, Field, as a choice school for their child to learn the language, support should also be provided for the target language that is provided as the instruction there. So I definitely agree and feel that serious consideration be given towards the instructional aides and paraprofessionals that will be at these schools to give instruction in that target language. Because as you stated in your question, and from what I've heard from our parents at our dual language schools, distance learning for students during the pandemic and was quite challenging to learn not only a new language, but the content, which they were made to learn. So not only are they learning grade level concepts, language proficiency to reclassify, but also a dual language. So there are several obstacles for a child to learn during distance learning. And I feel that the monies that will be set aside to target student growth and this 10% that will provide for paraprofessionals to support the teachers at these schools will only not only assist student learning, but it also will greatly assist and support the teachers at that school. So thank you for that question.
Thank you, Mr. Rellis. Lorena.
The next question is for Dr. Sahakian. Can ELL funds be used to provide more trauma-informed training and support for students?
Thank you, Ms. Hernandez, for the question. It is a very important question. Trauma-informed care efforts in the district has been well underway with colleagues that are on this call, such as Dr. Reynoso, for quite a few years. It's the umbrella that really kind of couches the behavior RTI response to intervention and positive behavior intervention supports initiatives, as well as the social emotional learning components that were shared earlier. So we're looking to not only with ELO to expand these opportunities for the school sites and the teachers to really kind of fill their toolkit on how to respond to students who might be in need. Like I presented in terms of some of the SEL curriculum will bring to the surface needs that teachers could identify, and then to refer out to the appropriate resources, whether it's a tier 1, tier 2, or tier 3 type of intervention. Trauma-informed care really provides that training and that lends to our educators, our PUSD staff, to really identify students who might be in need or are coming to the classroom with some level of trauma. So we're looking to continue these efforts and build upon the initiative of the past and moving it forward and heightening the SEL components in order to really adjust and provide our students returning back to school, particularly 21-22 school year, with the needed resources that they deserve. So thank you for that question.
Thank you, Dr. Sahakian. Just a little time check. We have about 20 minutes left. So Lorena, next question.
Yes, this is for Dr. Barnes. If the spending of this 11 million grant is supposed to be aligned with the 38 million, how is that alignment going to be achieved?
Thank you for that question. The district, the 38 million, that would be the ESSER 3 funds. And so that is actually of that 39 or 38 million, we have to set aside 20 million for learning loss mitigation, which is actually has the same requirements as the ELO grant. So actually, it will be very easy to align the two since they have the same requirements. And a lot of what was discussed tonight is not only summer program, but also interventions throughout the school year. And so those would continue using the ESSER 3 funds. And I don't know if David, Dr. Rennie has any additional information.
Thank you for that. What I can add to that is the planning requirement contained within the Expanded Learning Opportunities Plan is primarily focused on coordinating the funds with ESSER 2, but ESSER 3 and ESSER 2 have similar allowability rules. And so the alignment piece will be very easy to crosswalk in terms of what strategies we are finding effective that we would like to continue to fund once we receive those. However, the remaining portions of the ESSER funds that are available actually have even broader allowability than what the Expanded Learning Opportunity Grant provides for. And so as we've been thinking through this, we've really been prioritizing the supplemental services that can be delivered in person as coming from the Expanded Learning Opportunities, and then using the federal funds from ESSER to fill in more of the logistical type items like PPE or the need for other types of facility type maintenance that really wouldn't make sense to go into the ELO grant.
Thank you, Dr. Barnes and Dr. Rennie. Lorena?
This question is also for Dr. Barnes. Is it possible to utilize some of the funds to reduce class sizes for the school year 21-22 so that no classroom exceeds 25 students in upper elementary? This would help teachers close any instructional gaps created by the 12.5 months of distance learning.
So while it is, it could be used as a strategy, it really isn't recommended because as we talked about, this is one-time funding. And so the ability to hire a teacher or several teachers that would be required for that, it would be very difficult. Teachers usually don't just take on a one-year contract. So once you hire them, they're permanent for you. And so it would require hiring people and then laying them off 10 months later. And so usually based on sustainability, that's not a strategy that we would recommend. We'd rather have somebody maybe of an hourly basis go in and help the teacher, maybe allow for the students to be in smaller groups during the class and get the information that they need or the help that they need, would be a better use of the funds than hiring an additional teacher and then having to lay them off.
Thank you, Dr. Barnes. Lorena, next question.
This question is for Dr. Blanco. How does parent input fit in with the proposed plans? What amount of the funds have been allocated or not allocated?
So there's really no, I would say, lack of parent input in Pasadena Unified. That's one of the things we all love about Pasadena is how involved our community really is. So we have many recommendations through the LCAP process that were unfunded, right? Because we were in a situation where we did not have extra resources that have come from our parent groups. And this grant has given us an opportunity to kind of comb through some of those ideas and finally be able to put the resources behind them. One example that I can give is for our English learners. When I first arrived back to the district, we had a job description for EL aide / clerk positions that were going to help with at that time, SALT testing, and then also support for students in the classroom. And that money was not there to fund it when we started balancing the LCAP. We also received many written recommendations from our African American Parent Council which have not been funded. So I think as you look through the plan and learn more about the strategies, you'll see that many ideas that have been brought forth in the past are now going to be able to be funded. We also went back and looked at areas where we had to reduce. With our Learns program, we had a high school tutoring program that, as funds reduced for the Learns program, we had to reduce to only a K-8 program. That's something that we'll be able to put back in place. When we took that away, we heard from our parents what a loss that was, to their students. So the parent involvement in PUSD is an ongoing process. I think that we have records that date very far back as to what's been recommended and the responses from the superintendent regarding those recommendations. So those were our first considerations. We also are paying very close attention to our 2 board resolutions that are commitments to our Black students and Latinx students, and how we're developing our strategies are considering the needs of those students who have been, in some cases, furthest from opportunity. So I think that we'll continue to engage with our community that way that we have, and then also take recommendations on how to deepen that engagement. This evening is an example of that. We heard that parents wanted to have a town hall through our parent leaders, and we're more than willing to, be able to engage this way. I think we see parent engagement as something that's ongoing and continuous for us.
Thank you, Dr. Blanco. Lorena, next question.
This is for Dr. Blanco and Ms. Julie Hurst. Will the district provide new technology, also books, art supplies, play equipment, and other supplies to improve learning opportunities?
I will let Ms. Hurst answer because I know we have so many exciting things planned in those areas.
So we will be providing new technology to our students in the fall. We have done a device refresh and we are getting Chromebooks that will be capable of running all of our programs. And we are also working with the Technology Advisory Committee to come up with a recommendation for minimum classroom technology packages so that there's equitable technology around the district.
Wonderful. Thank you, Ms. Hurst. Lorena, next question.
For Dr. Blanco, there was some mention earlier in the presentation about extended learning time for students. Has there been any preliminary discussion about a longer school day or a longer school year? And if so, what would such schedule look like?
So there's been a task force that's been working with Dr. Reynoso on, possible innovation and options. Right now, we are tied by the hands of legislation of what we can do when SB 86 expires on June 30th. We only have an option right now of returning to what we had previously or an independent study model. This may change with the May revise, but at this time, those are the ways that we can collect average daily attendance. Our student think tank shared a lot of ideas yesterday with Dr. Pomeroy and myself in terms of starting later and things that could help high school students be more successful. So there has been conversations about that because we will be enacting a bill for later start, but that doesn't come into law until the following year after next year. So I would say stay tuned for that. And then in order to change our contractual hours, we would work really closely with our labor partners to reach agreements on how we could best make that happen.
Thank you, Dr. Blanco. Time check, we have just under 10 minutes, so probably about 4 more questions before we wrap it up. So Lorena, what's the next question?
This question is for Dr. Reynoso and Ms. Tolliver from LEARNS. What is PUSD doing to ensure that the children who are furthest behind will have priority access to summer academic programs? And will any additional 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. care for working families be available so their children are able to attend these summer academic programs?
Ms. Tolliver, I'll jump on the first part if you want to jump on the second part, or we'll line each other to what we've been working on. I'm in a bad spot. I apologize. I hope you can hear me. What I want to first begin with is, yes, we absolutely have identified criteria. That was one of our first steps before we even began developing what the programs would encompass. We have that criteria. It has been shared with all of our partners. In addition, all of our site leaders, as well as our program leads, are the identification that we are providing, and then we will be working in correlation with our partners and our leaders so that the priority goes to the students that meet the criteria. First, meeting a need, a want. So we're very excited about what. Okay, can you still hear me? I'll jump back into the childcare. This one angle that we are exploring further with extensions that we can.
All right, Ms. Tolliver, maybe you can pick up.
Can you hear me or no? I'm so sorry.
You're cutting out quite a bit. I may be turning off your camera.
Okay, I'm gonna stop then. Thank you so much. I apologize.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's great questions. We have been working very closely with the district to ensure that, that there are program options for all students for LEARNS. We definitely do give priority enrollment to foster and homeless youth, as is required as part of our grant funding, and then making sure that the program is accessible for families who need it. Also having the district provide so many other options for summer programming for students as well, so that there's a plethora of programs provided this summer, and the goal was to make sure that every family who had a need has a summer program for their students to attend. So I really appreciate the hard work of Dr. Blanco and all the district team in making sure that there are plenty of options for families so that every student who needs support for the summer will have it. As it relates to extended childcare, we are working to onboard and hire additional staffing for this summer. The bulk of our staffing currently are serving students from 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. But we do recognize that a lot of our parents, that participate in our program work, and so they have longer days. So we're working to onboard more staffing, because that does require the additional hiring of staff to provide support during the 7 to 8 a.m. hour in the morning, and also the 2 p.m. to 6 p.m. hour Mondays through Friday, because we recognize that parents, need time they work. So we're working on hiring staff for that. Availability of those options will be dependent on staff availability. So as I said, we are really working hard to hire staff. The process is moving a little slowly, but we have secured some to open up the summer programs to provide some extended care options. And so we're working as quickly as we can to hire as much additional staff as we're able to meet the needs of families who need the extended care. Thank you so much for the wonderful questions.
Thank you, Ms.
That's
Tolliver.
also an advertisement for people who love children and that are looking for jobs.
Absolutely.
Wonderful. Thank you for that. Looks like we probably have time for 2 more questions. So Lorena, let's see. What do you have next?
I think this will be for Dr. Barnes. Approximately how much of the ELO grant will remain after subtracting the summer program expenditures?
That might be for Dr. Rennie, because I think we were dividing the funds between the summer and the fall thus far. So he may have some totals to share in that area.
I was having trouble unmuting, but yes, I was going to defer to Dr. Rennie on that one. Thank you.
Yes, and thank you, and apologies for being slower on the unmuting and having a slideshow and a spreadsheet to scroll down. Rough estimates right now, because I've had the interesting task of asking people to give me a preliminary plan while also writing the plan and not having a final plan. But currently right now for the immediate summer, we're looking in a ballpark figure of just under $2 million. It's more around like 1.9 million. So that's still going to leave us with approximately, off the top of my head, about $8 million, in funds to work with over the course of next school year plus the following school year. What I do not have available right at the tip of my fingers is the breakout of how much of that is directed in paraprofessional services and how much is non-paraprofessional services. But I will be dealing with that when I get into the office tomorrow.
Wonderful. Thank you, Dr. Rennie. Looks like final question, Lorena.
I'm going to make her a twofer.
Okay.
For Dr. Hasakian. These are pretty related. Kids will be all over the map socially, emotionally, and academically coming back to the fall. Could resources be used to bridge these gaps? And also, please prioritize the mental health of our students, particularly in the middle and high school levels, where we have seen serious issues. What programs does the district intend to implement to address students' mental health?
Sure, thank you, Ms. Hernandez. I'll start with the mental health question for now. We have programs in place with the support of our teachers to help us identify externalizing, internalizing behaviors of students that might prompt, it's called a universal screener, and it might prompt results to identify students that might need higher intervention and higher tiered supports, such as mental health. And when that does occur, we have mental health agencies, both external mental health agencies, 7 mental health agencies within the community that PUSD has an MOU with, that parents, caregivers, students could even refer themselves to these agencies. We have an agency assigned to each and every one of our PUSD campuses, as well as our internal PUSD mental health services department. So the mental health components for case management and intensive supports are quite robust when it comes to mental health supports, which is a tier 3 intervention. And looking to, and a part of question number 1, looking to expand the social and emotional learning opportunities. We're, of course, have a robust plan in place through ELO to expand what already exists through SEL curriculum such as Second Step, the universal screener. But we're looking to expand into what I'm so excited about is our high school SEL learning curriculum, which would be through Heartbeat as well as through TCP, the Teen Connection Project. The Teen Connection Project is really geared for higher level need of students that might need a higher level of goal setting, more school connectedness, as well as a referral to counseling. So the Teen Connection Project will be pretty much new to PUSD, and we're looking forward to the possibility of this being funded, of course, through ELO so that we could move forward with summer PD and for our students K-12 to have a robust PBIS implementation with our universal screeners, with our community partners, as well as our SEL components. So thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Dr. Sahakian. It is now 7:45, and on behalf of Collaborate Pasadena out of Pacific Oaks College, the LCAP PAC. We'd really like to thank all of you for joining us for this town hall, and much appreciation to all the PUSD staff that spent a lot of time over this last week putting this presentation together for us. Be sure to check out pusd.us/town-hall for recordings of this meeting and answers to the questions that were given here, and also other questions that were submitted that we were not able to address. So with that, thank you all for joining us, and we look forward to you at the next town hall.